My wife sent me a text at 11 p.m. Don't think I am coming home. I am having a good time with a strong man. You can sleep and snore. Poor old man. I was heartbroken, but I just replied, okay, enjoy your night. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Dario Sanchez from Texas. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I hadn't expected much from the night. It was just another Wednesday in a string of identical evenings, and after 30 years of working in insurance and 18 years of marriage, my routines were as solid as concrete. I brushed my teeth at 10:15, let the dog out at 10:30, and was in bed by 10:45, watching some cooking show I didn't care about with the volume turned low. I wasn't looking for excitement, not anymore. The things I used to care about, romantic dinners, weekend trips, small surprises, had long withered on the vine. These days, peace was the only luxury I still pursued. And I thought, perhaps foolishly, that silence meant peace. But silence can hide rot just as easily. I heard my phone buzz on the nightstand at exactly 11:02 p.m. That was already unusual. No one texts me that late unless it's bad news, an accident, a death, or someone locking themselves out. I glanced at the screen, expecting a message from my brother or one of the guys from the office. But no, it was her, my wife. Just her name on the screen was enough to make my stomach twist, and not in the way it once had when I used to rush to reply with a smile. No, this time, I felt dread wash over me before I even opened it. I should have known it was coming. I'd been catching fragments of the truth for almost 2 years, just never the whole thing. But her text wasn't subtle. There was no ambiguity to hide behind, no gray space to rationalize. Just brutal clarity. Don't think I'm coming home. I'm having a good time with a strong man. You can sleep and snore. Poor old man. The words didn't hit me all at once. They landed piece by piece, like stones tossed into a frozen lake, each one cracking the surface a little deeper. I read it again, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, but it hadn't changed. She was gone, and she wasn't even ashamed about it. She wanted me to know. No, more than that. She wanted me to feel humiliated. That was the real sting. It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. That line, poor old man, burned more than anything. I'd never claimed to be strong or flashy or young. I just tried to be steady, reliable, the kind of man who didn't walk out when things got tough. But maybe that was the real problem. Maybe my steadiness made her feel trapped, or bored, or resentful. Either way, I knew then that I wasn't going to chase her. I wouldn't yell or beg. I wouldn't even argue. I just replied, okay, enjoy your night, and turned the phone face down on the nightstand. But I didn't sleep. Not a damn second. Instead, I lay there in the dark with my chest aching in a quiet, private way that didn't even feel like pain anymore. It felt like numbness. There's a kind of grief that's not loud. It doesn't cry or shout or punch walls. It just lies next to you in bed, watching you breathe, making each inhale a little heavier than the last. And as I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, I started thinking not about her text, but about the last 2 years. The gaslighting, the excuses, the weekends she needed space, the time she'd come home smelling like cologne I didn't wear. All the missed calls, the unexplained credit card charges, the growing emotional distance that I kept chalking up to stress or age. I had known. God, I had known. But I kept choosing not to see it clearly because the alternative felt worse. Loneliness, embarrassment, failure. Around 3 a.m., I got up. The house was dead quiet. The kind of quiet that feels cruel. I walked past the kitchen she never cleaned anymore, down the hallway where her heels used to echo when she'd returned from girls' nights. I opened our bedroom closet, still packed with her designer bags and expensive coats, things I'd bought her over the years in hopes of keeping her happy. I didn't hesitate. I started packing. One by one, I grabbed her things, tossing them into suitcases and garbage bags without ceremony. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't even cry. I just moved like someone finally finishing a job they'd put off for too long. At one point, I paused to stare at a framed photo of us from our 10th anniversary. Her in a red dress, me in a navy suit, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. I wanted to smash it, but I didn't. I just turned it face down on the nightstand and kept moving. By dawn, I was done. Everything of hers was packed and sitting on the front porch, just in time for the early morning rain to begin drizzling over the city. I didn't cover anything. I didn't text her. I didn't leave a note. The rain would speak for me. If she was going to abandon me for a strong man, then she could damn well go be strong with him in the wet and cold. I sat in the living room with a mug of black coffee, listening to the soft patter of rain on the roof and the occasional hiss of tires on wet asphalt. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel unsure. I felt done. There was no sadness in that moment, just clarity. She had broken something that couldn't be repaired. And what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I had my own quiet ace to play. Her lover, the strong man she had so proudly run off to, he worked for my friend's company. I had met him once, briefly, at a holiday party. Arrogant little punk. Thought his charm made him untouchable. But I remembered his name. And I remembered the smug look he gave me that night. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Now, it felt like a thread I could pull until the whole thing unraveled. Let them enjoy their little rebellion. It wouldn't last long. I didn't plan revenge out of spite. It wasn't about getting even. It was about finally choosing myself after years of being chosen last. Let her laugh. Let her call me a poor old man. But when the dust settled, I'd still be standing. Alone, maybe, but whole. And that was more than she'd ever be again. I watched her pull up around 7:45 the next morning. The tires of her white Audi sliced through the puddles like she was arriving home from a long, satisfying shift at work, not like someone who had texted her husband she was spending the night with another man. She parked slightly crooked, as usual, one wheel brushing the edge of the lawn I used to maintain before I stopped caring. Through the fogged windshield, I could see her silhouette pause, probably noticing her luggage piled by the front steps, soaked and sagging under the weight of cold rain. I didn't move. I just stood behind the curtain, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching her stare at her own consequences like she couldn't believe they were real. She opened the door without knocking, still using her key, still assuming she had access to a life she'd already walked away from. She entered like she owned the place, shaking water off her umbrella, glancing around like nothing had happened. "Wow," she muttered with a smirk, peeling off her damp jacket. Real mature. That was the first thing she said to me. No apology. No explanation. Just passive-aggressive sarcasm, as if her actions the night before had been some harmless prank and I was the overreacting fool. She looked at me like I was supposed to feel embarrassed for putting her belongings in the rain, like I should have kept the illusion of our life going for her convenience. Her audacity was a performance, and she expected me to play the supporting role, stoic, hurt, maybe even desperate. But I didn't give her what she wanted. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her and said, "You got my reply. There's nothing left to talk about." And I meant every word. She paused, her mouth opening slightly like she had more to say, but couldn't find the angle. She was trying to figure out if I was bluffing, if this was just a tantrum, a man lashing out so she could later claim emotional instability. "Seriously?" she asked, walking past me toward the kitchen like she still lived there. "You're throwing my stuff out because I had a little fun? God, you're so dramatic. This is why I needed space." She made herself a glass of water, still dripping from the rain, still acting like I owed her civility. It was surreal how calm she was. Like everything she did made perfect sense, like I was just a bitter, out-of-touch husband trying to control a woman who had found herself. That phrase, found herself, she'd used it before during arguments. Told me I didn't support her growth. Said I wanted a wife who acted like a servant. When in truth, all I wanted was a partner who showed up, who kept their promises, who didn't treat marriage like a backup plan for when the fun wore off. And yet here she was, back in my kitchen, drinking from the glasses I bought, after telling me she was sleeping with someone else just hours before. I realized, then, she hadn't expected consequences. She thought I'd always take her back, that no matter what she did, this house, this life, I would be waiting. I walked over and took the glass from her hand mid-sip. It startled her. Her eyes widened like I'd slapped her, but I just placed it in the sink and said, "You don't live here anymore." The words came out colder than I expected, but I didn't regret them. Her face changed. For the first time, she looked unsure. Not apologetic, but definitely off balance. "So you're kicking me out?" she asked, voice rising, like the idea was ridiculous. "After everything I've done for you?" That line almost made me laugh. Everything she had done for me. The entitlement was suffocating. I didn't reply. I simply walked past her, opened the front door, and gestured toward the bags, which by now were sagging with rainwater, their contents no doubt ruined. "You should go before this gets uglier," I said quietly. She stepped toward the door slowly, staring out at her drenched belongings like they were foreign objects. "You're pathetic," she muttered, not even looking at me. "No wonder he laughs at you. You act like a man, but you're weak. Always have been." I let the words hang there, heavy and sharp. She wanted a reaction, wanted me to yell, to plead, to break. But there was nothing left in me for her. Whatever love I'd once had drowned under years of disrespect, erosion, and quiet contempt. This moment wasn't rage. It was release. She walked out slowly, like she thought I might stop her at the last second. But I didn't. I watched her gather her wet bags, her ruined designer shoes squelching in the mud, and walk back to her car without once turning around. The house felt heavier once she was gone, but not worse, just quieter, emptier. I sat on the edge of the couch and finally allowed myself to feel something deeper than shock. It wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was the aching kind of peace you get after pulling a thorn out that's been buried for years. It bleeds. It hurts. But it's clean. I looked around the living room, still filled with furniture we picked together, wedding photos on the wall, a life built with 2 sets of hands, only one of which had stayed faithful. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if I'd be lonely or liberated or just numb for a while, but I knew I wouldn't be crawling back. That part of my life was done. That afternoon, I made a call to David, a longtime friend who owned a security firm downtown. We had grabbed lunch a few times over the years, and I remembered him mentioning a certain smooth-talking young recruit that had caused problems in the office. The same man I'd seen at our Christmas party with a hand too familiar on my wife's lower back. "Yeah, I remember him," David said on the other end of the line. "Why do you ask?" I didn't give him details, not at first. Just said he should take a closer look at the guy's access logs and spending. "He's not who you think he is," I added. "And he's definitely not loyal." David promised to follow up. I trusted he would. He'd always hated liars. By sunset, I was exhausted, but not from moving boxes or answering questions. I was drained from pretending. For 2 years, I had played the fool, the patient husband, the man willing to believe a lie because the truth hurt too much. But now I had clarity. My house was quiet. My phone was silent. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next disappointment to walk through the door. The silence in the house the next morning felt almost medicinal. There were no heels clicking down the hallway, no passive-aggressive sighs from the kitchen, no phone calls whispered from behind closed doors. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of wood settling under the weight of absence. I made breakfast without having to think about anyone else's preferences. No almond milk, no avocado toast. No need to pretend I liked the same trendy diets she jumped on. I fried 2 eggs, buttered some toast, poured real coffee, and sat by the window watching the wind carry away the last of the storm clouds. For the first time in years, the food tasted like something I had chosen. It was a small thing. But small things can remind you that you're still a person, not just a background character in someone else's drama. Later that afternoon, I got a call back from David. He was calm, but I could tell something was off in his tone, like he was holding back judgment until he had all the pieces. "I looked into your boy," he said, "and you were right. He's been moving money around, small amounts, spread across dummy contracts, consulting hours that don't exist. Took a while to catch, but it's all there." I listened quietly, my fingers tightening around the phone. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. Just focused. "He's also been using the company car for personal trips," David continued, "including some weekends where he said he was out on security audits. Guess where he was instead?" I didn't have to guess. I already knew. Probably spending those weekends with my wife. No, my ex-wife now. on hotel balconies, drinking cocktails and laughing at how easy I'd been to fool. David said he was forwarding the files to HR and legal. This isn't just termination, he said. This is fraud. He'll be lucky if he only loses the job. I thanked him, not with glee but with a heaviness in my voice that I couldn't quite disguise. He said he was sorry, not just for the theft, but for what it meant, what it confirmed. You always spoke well of her, he added quietly. I'm sorry it ended like this. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Me too, I said. But endings like this don't happen all at once. They rot slowly. You just don't smell it until it's everywhere. I hung up the phone and sat in that stillness, trying to decide what I felt. Satisfaction? Maybe. But it was laced with a kind of mourning too. Not for her. She had made her choices, but for myself. For the version of me that kept hoping, that kept forgiving, that kept thinking love alone could fix everything. I missed that man, even if he'd been naive. There's something pure about believing in the people you love. And there's something shattering about realizing they never deserved it. The news broke quickly inside David's company. A week later, I heard through mutual contacts that the young man, Marcus, that was his name, had been escorted out of the building by security. His desk cleared, his accounts frozen. Apparently, he didn't go quietly. He yelled, threatened lawsuits, tried to call in favors. But David had already filed a formal complaint with law enforcement. By the time the audit was complete, Marcus was facing charges that could land him behind bars. And the best part? I never lifted a finger. I didn't frame him, didn't plant anything, didn't need to lie. I just let the truth rise to the surface like oil in dirty water. His own arrogance did the rest. What struck me most was how fast everything unraveled for them. Within a matter of days, he had lost his job, his income, and his reputation. And with him went her fantasy. The texts started again, this time from her. They began subtly. Hope you're okay, just checking in, let's talk. I didn't reply, not even to say no. Silence is its own language. Then the tone shifted. You're being childish. You think this makes you better than me? I still didn't respond. But then, finally, came the truth wrapped in desperation. He's not who I thought he was. I made a mistake. Please let me come home. It was almost poetic, really. She had traded stability for excitement, depth for surface, and now she was watching the glitter peel off in real time. I didn't gloat. I didn't forward her messages to friends or post anything online. That kind of revenge wasn't necessary. I had my peace, and that was more valuable than any public victory. But I did read every message she sent, not out of longing, but out of curiosity, like examining a wound you know has finally stopped bleeding. She didn't apologize, not truly. She said the word, but never admitted the depth of the betrayal. She still framed everything as confusion, as temporary weakness, not the deliberate deception it had always been. That told me everything I needed to know. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, I heard a knock at the door. Not the kind of knock that announces friends or neighbors. This one was slow, hesitant, like someone asking for permission before they even speak. I opened the door, and there she was, standing with her hair wet from the drizzle, eyes red, mascara smudged. She looked tired, older, not glamorous and triumphant like she had when she walked out. She looked like someone who had burned all her bridges and suddenly realized she didn't know how to swim. I've got nowhere else to go, she whispered. I didn't say anything, just held the door halfway open and stared at her. She tried to speak again, but I raised my hand. No, I said quietly. You don't get to come back here. She blinked, like she hadn't rehearsed for this outcome. Please, she said. I was stupid. I see that now. I believe she did. But recognition doesn't rewrite the past. You were cruel, I replied. And you didn't stop being cruel until the world stopped rewarding you for it. That's when the tears came. Real ones this time. Not performative. She sobbed quietly, standing on the same porch where her bags had once sat in the rain. I let her cry, but I didn't let her in. She stayed there for a few more minutes, crying, pleading, promising. But eventually, she turned and walked away. Not with anger this time, but with resignation. She knew it was over. For real. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and the silence that followed was the loudest relief I'd ever felt. I didn't hear from her again for almost a month. After that last desperate attempt on the porch, She vanished, at least from my day-to-day life. I'd be lying if I said she didn't cross my mind. Not in a longing kind of way, but more like checking a wound for tenderness. I'd be driving to work, or folding laundry, or walking past a restaurant we used to like, and I'd wonder where she was sleeping, what she was eating, if she'd found someone else to latch onto, or if reality had finally cornered her. It's strange how someone can be your whole world for years, and then become a ghost in the background of your errands. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of me who used to believe in her. The news came from Angela, my neighbor across the street, the unofficial eyes and ears of our block. Angela didn't mean to gossip. She just had a way of sharing information like she was handing you your mail. I saw her, she said one morning, sipping tea on my porch like we did every other Saturday now. Downtown, near the old bus depot. Her eyes flicked up from her mug. She looked rough, Charles, like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't say anything, just let the words settle. I didn't ask for details, but Angela gave them anyway. She was sitting on the curb with 2 trash bags, talking to herself. Looked lost. The air between us grew heavy, and she placed a hand on my wrist. You okay? She asked gently. I nodded. Yeah, I said. It's just strange seeing Karma show up on schedule. I didn't go looking for her. That's important to say. I didn't drive downtown to spy on her or stalk her social media. I didn't want to know how bad it had gotten because part of me already knew, and another part didn't want to take pleasure in it. But the calls started again. Blocked numbers. Late-night voicemails. One of them I played all the way through, just once. Her voice was hoarse, broken. I don't have anyone, she said. I thought he loved me. He said I was special. But as soon as he got fired, he changed. Started calling me names. Said I was dead weight. Told me to leave. I didn't even have enough for a motel. Her breath hitched. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I didn't know where else to go. That voicemail sat in my inbox for days before I deleted it. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't believe a single thing she said anymore. She said she didn't have anyone, but she'd had someone when she texted me that night, bragging about being with this strong man. She'd had someone when she laughed at me on the porch. She'd had someone when she mocked my age, my loyalty, my stability. It wasn't loneliness that had brought her to ruin, it was arrogance. And that's not something you fix with a place to sleep. That's something life has to crush out of you, piece by piece, until humility is the only thing you have left. I did learn more over time, bits and pieces from people who still talked to her, or tried to. Her family had distanced themselves. Her sister blocked her. Her mother, who once called me the best thing that ever happened to her daughter, apparently told her she needed to learn the hard way. Marcus, the man she threw everything away for, was sentenced to 18 months for theft and falsifying business records. She showed up to one of the court hearings, according to a friend of mine who worked security there. Tried to plead for leniency. He didn't even look at her. Just walked past her in shackles like she was nobody. And maybe by then, she was. They say rock bottom teaches you things the mountaintop never could. But they don't tell you that rock bottom has a basement. I heard through a former co-worker of hers that she tried staying with a friend in another city for a bit, but overstayed her welcome. Started borrowing money, lying about needing it for job applications and bus fare. Eventually, people stopped answering her calls. She burned every bridge with the same carelessness she burned our marriage, with that same belief that someone would always save her. That no matter how cruel or selfish she became, someone would offer her shelter, sympathy, salvation. And when no one did, she started knocking on doors she had once slammed behind her. One of those doors was mine, again. I was coming home from work, briefcase in hand, coat soaked from the rain. And there she was, sitting on the front steps like something out of a memory I didn't want to revisit. She looked thinner, hollow. The woman who once dripped in designer everything was now wearing a fraying coat and shoes that looked like they'd been borrowed from a donation bin. Please, she said as I walked past her toward the door. Just hear me out. I didn't stop moving. You already said everything you needed to say, I replied. In a text, remember? Her face crumpled. I was stupid, she said. I thought he loved me. I thought you'd always be there. That last part made me pause. Exactly, I said. You thought I'd always be there. That's the problem. She stood then, suddenly animated, reaching for my arm. We had a life, Charles. We built something. You can't just throw it away." Her desperation echoed off the empty street, but I didn't raise my voice. "You threw it away," I said, stepping back. I just finally stopped holding the trash. That silenced her. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at her feet like they'd betrayed her. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. I shrugged. "Anywhere that's not here." Then I walked inside and locked the door. I leaned against the wall for a moment, heart pounding, not from fear or regret, but from the sheer emotional weight of the moment. Rejecting someone who once shared your bed, your dreams, your name, it wasn't easy. But sometimes doing the hard thing is the only way to reclaim yourself. I didn't peek out the window to see how long she stayed. I didn't need to. She was already gone. Not just from my house, but from the future I'd once imagined. That door was closed. And this time, it would stay that way. The thing about a quiet neighborhood is that nothing stays quiet for long. Word travels fast when lawns are neat, porch lights are always on, and the same dog-walking routines loop every morning like clockwork. People here notice things. They don't always say it out loud, but they file it away in polite smiles and sidelong glances. So when my wife disappeared from our home, bags on the porch, gossip on the breeze, it didn't take long before curiosity became conversation. I saw the way the neighbors' eyes lingered a second longer when I mowed the lawn. The way Mrs. Dorsey from 2 houses down tilted her head with fake concern when she asked, "Everything all right, Charles?" Her tone was sugar, but her eyes were salt. It didn't help that she came back more than once, each time looking more defeated than the last. The second time, she didn't even make it up the steps, just stood across the street, staring at the house like it held some secret she couldn't remember how to access. And of course, Angela saw her. Angela always saw everything. She didn't even knock this time. Just crossed the road and sat beside me on the porch like it was her full-time job to witness my life unravel. "She's losing it," she said without preamble, passing me a hot cup of chamomile. "She was crying last night near the bus stop. Told someone she used to live in that house, but her husband kicked her out for overreacting." Angela chuckled bitterly. "Overreacting, my ass." It's funny how validation from someone outside the marriage can hit harder than anything you say to yourself. Angela had known both of us for years. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was the kind of third-party character life sends in to remind you that you're not crazy, that what happened to you really happened, and that your response was justified. "You gave her more chances than I would have," she said one afternoon, her voice soft but firm. "You stayed quiet, handled your business. Now she wants to rewrite the script like she was the victim." I didn't respond, just nodded slowly, because she was right. That's exactly what my ex was trying to do, reshape the narrative now that her version had fallen apart. Then the phone call started, not from her, but from mutual friends and distant relatives. People who hadn't bothered to check in for years suddenly found their empathy switch. They came out of nowhere with polite concern masked as guilt-tripping. "Maybe you should talk to her. She's not in a good place. Don't you think everyone deserves a second chance?" The worst was her cousin Meredith, a woman I hadn't heard from since our wedding day, who messaged me on Facebook with a paragraph full of spiritual cliches and backhanded judgment. "God forgives, Charles. We all fall short of grace sometimes. Maybe you should open your heart again." What if this is her way of coming back better? I stared at that message for 10 minutes before deleting it without a word. It wasn't that I didn't believe in second chances. I just didn't believe in wasting them on people who weaponized your love. She hadn't fallen into a mistake. She'd walked into it, eyes wide open, then laughed in my face while she did it. She had made a conscious decision to humiliate me, to mock me, to replace me. And only after the replacement turned to dust did she remember the taste of loyalty. No, I wasn't interested in being someone's fallback plan. I wasn't a retirement home for the emotionally bankrupt. And that was a truth no sermon or Facebook message could shake from me. Still, the whispers grew louder. I'd hear my name while walking into the grocery store. See 2 people pause their conversation when I entered a room. Even at work, colleagues who'd once admired my composure now looked at me like I was some tragic character from a sad story they didn't fully understand. It wasn't pity that bothered me. It was the assumption. The assumption that because I didn't rage or retaliate, I must still be broken. That because I hadn't moved on with someone new, I must be stuck in the past. But what they didn't realize is that peace doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes peace looks like eating alone without anxiety, like sleeping through the night without wondering who your partner is texting, like silence that doesn't scream. Then came the final voicemail, the one that tried to rewrite everything. She must have been at some shelter, or maybe a borrowed couch, because her voice echoed like she was speaking from a place she wasn't supposed to be. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice slow and measured. "About everything. About us. I know I hurt you. I know I acted selfishly. But I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted, and he made me feel alive. Like I mattered." She paused, long enough that I thought it was over. Then she added, "But now I see you were the one who loved me. You were the one who stayed. I didn't appreciate that. And I'm sorry." I deleted the message right then. Not because it was insincere, but because even if it was genuine, it came too late. That night, I sat on the back porch alone, watching the stars blink awake one by one. Angela had gone home. The neighbors had retreated indoors. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel lonely, but now felt earned. I thought about how many years I'd spent trying to fix what was broken, how many arguments I diffused, how many lies I accepted, how many times I convinced myself that loyalty meant forgiveness, even when it cost me my dignity. And now, for the first time, I felt no shame in having walked away. Because walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. It's knowing when the person you love has become a poison to your spirit. And that realization? It's freedom. It's strange how quiet peace can be. You expect it to arrive with fanfare, like some grand, life-altering declaration. But in truth, it slips in unnoticed. One day, you wake up and realize your chest isn't tight. Your thoughts aren't heavy. Your mornings aren't haunted by the weight of what-ifs. It's not joy exactly, at least not at first. It's relief. A kind of emotional stillness that settles over your life like freshly fallen snow. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for anything. No more cryptic texts. No more lies to untangle. No more watching my back in my own home. Just the slow, satisfying rhythm of living on my own terms. The house still bore traces of her, but they didn't sting anymore. The wedding photo we once hung in the hallway was gone, taken down the day after she left, but the hooks remained, 2 tiny holes in the drywall that I hadn't patched up yet. I used to stare at them with a kind of sadness, like they were scars. But now, I saw them differently. They were placeholders, evidence of something that used to matter. And like most things that pass through your life, they didn't need to be erased, just acknowledged. She had been a part of my story, a long, complicated, often painful part, but not the end, not even the climax. Just a long chapter that I had finally finished reading. I started doing things for myself again. Small things at first, cooking real meals, organizing my closet, jogging in the mornings without looking at the time. Then bigger ones, joining a community workshop, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during the years I'd spent managing someone else's chaos. My world didn't expand all at once, but little by little, like the tide coming in. I found myself laughing more, sleeping better, taking longer walks just because I could. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about what she was doing, or who she was with, or whether she'd ever understand what she'd thrown away. That part of me, the one that still wanted her to feel the full weight of regret, finally went quiet. I didn't need her to hurt anymore. I just needed her gone. That shift, that inner calm, was tested one final time when I ran into her by accident. It was a Saturday afternoon at the farmer's market, of all places. I was browsing a stall for fresh honey when I heard someone say my name, low and hesitant. I turned and there she was, standing a few feet away, hands in the pockets of a faded coat, eyes dull but familiar. She looked like she'd been living a half-life, surviving more than living. Her hair wasn't styled, her makeup was barely there, and her expression carried the weight of someone who had finally run out of pride. "Charles," she said again, a little firmer this time. I nodded. "Hello." That was all I gave her. She stepped closer, cautiously, like approaching a wild animal. "You look good," she offered. I nodded again. "Thank you." There was an awkward silence, heavy and dragging. Then she sighed. "I've been clean. Working at a diner. Living with a friend, for now." She paused like she was waiting for me to ask questions, like she was hoping for an opening. I gave her none. I know I messed up, she added. I lost everything. And I see that now. Her voice broke a little, but not enough to move me. Not anymore. I wasn't cold. I wasn't cruel. But I was done. You didn't just mess up, I said finally. You torched everything and laughed while it burned. You didn't just leave me. You humiliated me. You turned your back on everything we built, then acted like I was the villain for reacting. She looked down, ashamed. Maybe genuinely, maybe performatively. It didn't matter. I know, she whispered. I was stupid. I thought I deserved more. That line hung in the air between us, and for a brief second, I actually understood her. She did want more. She just didn't understand what more truly meant. She thought it meant excitement, passion, danger. But more can also mean peace, loyalty, consistency, things she only noticed after she'd lost them. I'm glad you're trying to fix your life, I said, voice steady. But I'm not part of that fix. I'm not a checkpoint you get to circle back to. I'm the boundary you crossed. And I don't rebuild bridges I didn't burn. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but I saw no fight in them. Just resignation. She nodded slowly, then stepped back. I'm sorry, she said again, quieter this time. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We both knew the chapter was closed. She turned and disappeared into the crowd, and I never saw her again. Months passed. Seasons changed. My life didn't become a fairy tale overnight, but it became mine again. I started seeing someone new, a friend of a friend who had also been through a divorce. We took things slow. There was no pressure, no performative romance, just honesty, real conversations, mutual respect. Whether it turned into something long-term didn't matter as much to me. What mattered was that I showed up whole this time. Not broken, not desperate, not clinging. Just present, just real. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled it. If maybe I should have given her one more chance. But they weren't there at 11 p.m. that night when she sent that text. They didn't feel the way my chest collapsed reading those words. They didn't sit through the months of lies, the cold silences, the careless betrayals. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving her. I walked away because I started loving myself more. That was the real turning point. Not the text, not the betrayal, but the moment I realized I was worth more than her chaos. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to someone who broke you is nothing at all. Just walk away. Heal. Rebuild. Let them sit with the silence they created. If you've ever had to choose peace over someone you once loved, share your story in the comments. We're listening. And if this story hit home for you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories about heartbreak, boundaries, and hard-earned emotional freedom. See you soon in the next story.